This Week in Startups is brought to you by Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. And InVision. Find out why so many hot startups are using InVision to prototype, present, and collaborate on design in real time. Sign up for a 90-day free trial today at envisionapp.com/twist.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
We're going to do a quick fireside chat with my friend Chamath, which, brace yourself, buckle up. It's always, we save the bluntest for last. Because if he were to speak first, we might have other people cancel their speaking gigs. And, because he might say something that hurts somebody's feelings. But Chamath is one of the most intelligent and driven and honest people I know in the business, so that's going to be awesome. We're also going to do 2 sets of judging, which will be about 17 companies, including 6 people from the hackathon, 4 of which we're going to invite to come to the Launch Incubator, which is pretty exciting. And then we have 7 people coming up from the demo pit and 1 alumni update. So great company pitches after that. Let me take a moment to thank Esri, Red Bull, and Bitmatica. Can I get a big round of applause for those partners? And please welcome Chamath Palihapitiya. Big round of applause. Yes, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you for letting me be here.
It's great to have you again. You're always...
This is called The Making of a Monster.
Who's the monster in this?
The making of Jason Calacanis.
Oof. It's getting bigger than everybody.
It's unbelievable. It's so awesome. It's amazing. It's scary. It's like you're like the Donald Trump of Silicon Valley.
Oh, please, that might stick. It could stick. It could stick, please. It is interesting with the reality show. People are starting to make that analogy, but in truth...
I meant your small hands.
Oh, the small hands? Well, you know what they say. Small hands, big heart. What a disaster this election is. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's been kind of the undertone of the whole event, which is people seem very scared about the state of America and what they saw last night during the debate and just the possibility that Donald Trump could run the country. What will that do to this country if he's in charge?
Well, I think there's something a lot more important. I think Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, who I think on either the extreme left and the extreme right are both basically completely insane and unelectable. But those are symptoms, I think, of a root cause that a lot of people aren't really thinking about. And I think thinking about it has implications to all of you. And the thing that I would say is that if you look at like how things change over time, people's preferences around many things evolve. The way that you eat, the way that you drink, the way that you dress. And then underneath all of those superficial things, structural things happen. Think of like the difference now in the movement towards both racial and gender equality. Think about simple things like valuing people that are not traditionally educated. Think about all of those kinds of societal level trends. The thing that nobody talks about is that we have a shift underway in what is the morality and what is acceptable morality. And nobody talks about that. And so, you have like a diehard constituency of people that fall on this sort of like Trump is a liar, right? I mean, if you saw the Romney thing. And if you ask the average person, they have a very different definition of morality and right and wrong now, because the world we live in is slightly more contrived and created than it ever was. Like our entire lives used to be how we were in our true self. Now, I would say it's like 60% our true self and 40% what we program on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. And to think that that doesn't have an effect on the psyche and the psychology, because all of us are like, oh, we're lying half the time anyways. And then when you see somebody else kind of lying, you're like, fuck it, he's lying too. So the morality is changing. And so in that morality changing to a different place, you have people like that who have the opportunity to seize it because it's not unacceptable the way that it was in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, right? So we're dealing with a very different dynamic in terms of how society believes there's a expectation in your behavior. And so that's why it exists. I'm like kind of just like fascinated sitting on the sidelines watching it all. Mostly because I have a Canadian passport, so I'm fucking out of here. If any of this shit goes down, I am gone. But I think it basically speaks to this thing. And figuring this out, I think, is important because it also will allow all of us to figure out how to spend our time, what services and products to build, because when you cater to that new morality, you win. Like, think of Tinder.
Yeah.
Think of like the behavior that Tinder is creating. I heard about an app yesterday which is basically a proxy version of like, DTF. And I thought to myself, holy shit, that would have been impossible 5 years ago. It would have been so morally in the gray or morally wrong. And now it's totally acceptable. Grindr, totally acceptable. So all of these things just to me are saying that our moral standards are changing in that it opens a lot of opportunities. And we should be thinking about that because it's important.
Do you think it's possible, and we'll move on from politics, but do you think what are the chances Trump is in office, a year from now?
I wrote this in Quora, but Trump is actually really important for all of us, and I think we should hope he wins the Republican nomination because it will prove that the Republican Party has never really existed for like the last 12 years. And really, there are 3 parties within the Republican Party. And actually, what I would also say is we should hope that Bernie Sanders really pushes Hillary to the extreme because we'll probably learn that there are 3 parties within the Democratic Party. And in all of that, what will happen is now candidates can run as independents, they can run on a legitimate agenda, and most importantly, you'll have to build some kind of coalition to really win, which will mean that people will be a lot more normal and you can actually have progress. So I am kind of the camp, which is, I hope Trump wins. It doesn't really matter as long as Hillary doesn't completely crush Sanders, and Mike Bloomberg will run and Mike Bloomberg will win. And then we'll have like a normal state.
How many people here are interested in a Mike Bloomberg candidacy? Raise your hand if you are. Okay.
I have said, look, we have a fantastic team of data scientists and, people that can really do amazing things in growth and paid act. I told those guys, I will shut down social capital through the election. And I'll take the same group of people that built Facebook to 1 billion users and I will allocate them to getting Mike into office.
You'll literally take the Facebook team to get Mike Bloomberg in office.
We will shut down social capital. We will not be writing checks. We will be working on the campaign. That's how important it is in many ways that we validate a third-party alternative because it just creates so much more possibility. Like, it's just a much brighter future. The 2-party system in America is completely busted.
It's
worthless.
It's a disaster.
It's terrible. It's broken.
Let me take a moment to thank my friends at Squarespace. And the reason I want to thank them is because the Launch Festival website, launchfestival.com and launchhackathon.com are gorgeous. They are perfect. They look like we spent $250,000 on them. And I can tell you, when I priced out getting the launch websites built, people quoted me literally 6 figures to make a beautiful, robust website. You know what? I got Squarespace and I used their templates, and my team, without any technical knowledge, no developers, were able to make the most gorgeous websites that are responsive and look great on mobile or tablet or on the desktop and have videos running in the background, and they integrate with everything we use. And they're so simple to use that I just said to my chief of staff, can you spend an hour teaching everybody how to use Squarespace so anybody can change the website? And he said, I did it in 5 minutes. It's that easy. So easy to use, so beautiful. And you can make a professional looking, well-designed, intuitive, and easy to use site with no code. It's just so easy. It's state-of-the-art technology. It's secure, it's stable, and it's trusted by millions. Some of the most respected brands in the world use it, in fact, and it starts at only $8 a month which if my math is correct is like under $100 a year, which is ridiculous. And you get a free domain, in fact, if you sign up for a year. Start your free trial today, no credit card required. And if you decide to sign up for Squarespace, please use the offer code TWIST and get 10% off, because that makes them feel great about This Week in Startups and their support of it. So go ahead and thank @Squarespace on Twitter if you love the program. Literally, that's one of the best things. I don't ask you guys for much help, but literally telling everybody on your Twitter, I love Squarespace, I use Squarespace, thank you Squarespace for supporting @TWI Startups, super helpful. Because you get the word out about their great product, you get the word out about how great the program is, and it all just works well. And I'll probably retweet you and favorite, so it's a good benefit for you too. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. What a great tagline. Build it beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. Simple, easy, beautiful, and affordable. In fact, I think it's too cheap. I would pay $80 a month. I'd pay probably $800 a month for our service. This good. Literally, it's worth $10,000 a year, and they're charging under $100. I don't get it. I don't know how they make this such a successful business. But I guess the secret is in the fact that millions of people use it. And when millions of people use your product, you know what? It becomes more stable, more reliable, faster, and you add more features because you're making money and you can invest in the platform. And that's one of the beautiful things I've seen. Every single quarter, Squarespace adds new features. Like they have a calendar feature, which we love. All this different support. We say, hey, I wonder if Squarespace can do this. And then we look on their blog and it's just like this constant cadence of new product coming out of that company. The product cadence at Squarespace is really impressive. All right, anyway, listen, I could talk about Squarespace all day because I love the product. And as you know, the partners on the show, they're all people who we use their products. We call it whitelisted advertising here, whitelisted partnerships. Squarespace, amazing. Build it beautiful. Thank you to my friends at Squarespace.
Let's talk a little bit about the state of our industry. We saw the sort of run-up of unicorns and massive valuations and massive funding. That stopped in its tracks over the summer, and now we've gotten back to normalcy. You have one of the high-profile unicorns in your portfolio, Slack. We've all just read they're raising hundreds of millions of dollars in the market. How is that going for them? And what do you think the state of the later stage is today?
So look, I think that, and I had this experience when I was in Facebook, because I remember in 2008, in the midst of the financial crisis, we had to raise money. And we took a 50% haircut on our valuation. We had raised the year before from Microsoft at $15 billion. 2008, in the middle of the financial crisis, we had to raise a couple $100 million. And I think the valuation was almost half. The reality is great companies will always be able to raise. What's changed is that there's now so much more money. So companies like Slack are just fantastic businesses. And really the question is people's understanding of what the potential upper bound is. And I think Slack is in a very unique place because it is an exceptional business model. It has huge, violent growth, massive gross margin profitability. And so it can choose to spend money in ways. So it is a very unique animal. It's probably one of a few companies. Uber, there may be a handful of others that truly control their destiny. And then there's everybody else who are building good businesses, and then the question is, how fast can they get their valuation reflected? And I think that's really slowed down. And then there's this last cohort, which is probably 40% of all startups who never should have gotten funded in the first place. And those will kind of go by the wayside. And they got funded because of greed by the investor class. They got funded because of a misallocation of resources to drive negative gross margin expansion. And when the incremental dollars aren't available to that cohort of companies, they always go away. And so we were probably in the beginning of a 2 to 3 year cycle of basically working through that glut of capital. But what will be left over, the small cohort of just total outlier fantastic companies, and this middle bucket, which are most companies who just have to work hard, do well, understand their business, be prudent, not waste your money on fucking real estate and, ping pong tables and kind bars, but invest in good people, pay them a fair wage, get them to build good stuff, price it fairly. They'll do fine.
And what do you think the state is for early stage companies? We have a lot of early stage companies here. It seems like this sort of becoming a part of the late stage is having a trickle-down effect in that, it's almost like an indigestion. The conveyor belt just went too fast. There's,
I mean, I'd
too many startups around.
I'd like to push back and say that I think that there is a lot of indigestion by the public folks, and it's actually like very expected that happens, because they were basically investing in private companies because the public markets were not giving them any return. The problem is that then they're coming in with 100% financial motives, and those motives are extremely short term. I need to make money in this company in the next 12 months so that I can mark to market that, create my profits, distribute it to myself, and move on. Because that's how the public financial industry works. At most, they look no longer than a year out. And now all of a sudden, because there's been such a tilt in public market equities, they go like this. Now your private market equities are worth way more than they should. So then they're like, oh, let me re-rate those. So Fidelity and all these guys go off and haircut at 50%. Well, all that's fine and good when you're in some little dim-lit office in Boston, but the impacts are for all of us. Now the employees of these companies are like, what just happened to our equity? Is our company worth 50% less? Why is it worth 50% less? And you don't really have a credible explanation. So that has a lot of effects that have yet to touch the earliest stage, because these guys are very much starting from anew. The good news is there, in my opinion, the best founders typically actually start in times like this. In fact, if you actually look backwards to I think it's like 1986 forward, you guys will be shocked by this, but a $100 billion company has been started every 6 years. 86, 92, 98, 04, 2010. Guess what year it is? 2016.
Cafe X. Yum, yum. Thank you for the yum, yum.
I mean, it's amazing. Cisco, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Uber, Cafe X.
If I hit 2, oh my goodness.
But the point is that times like this are actually very clarifying, because the tourists tend to leave, and then you're left with the folks that really believe in an idea, and I think that's also good for the ecosystem. And for folks like us, we're still investing really heavily. It just turns out that we end up over-indexing to the people we've already invested in because we believe in them, and then the bar just gets a little bit higher, and then it's also just simpler to figure out who's really in it for the long run. Because to start a business right now is actually a lot tougher than it was to start 18 months ago.
Let's talk
psychologically.
Psychologically.
Yeah.
Because it looks like you're starting it only to run into this huge triage that's going on.
18 months ago, they would have taken a meeting with you. You would have said, you know what, I'm going to put in $400,000 in a note. I'm going to open up to AngelList. All these other buffoons would have written $600,000, and now you have $1 million. It took 4 days, and everybody's in business, and everybody thinks like a genius. Then they take that $1 million, they hire 3 or 4 great engineers who say to them, well, you know what, I have an offer from 2 other companies. Then you say, okay, well, I'll pay you $110,000 versus $100,000. And then they say, well, I also need a hoverboard because I need to relax. And then you're like, well, okay, I'll buy you a hoverboard. Then like, well, I need one for the home as well. And then you buy one of those. Next thing you know, your $1 million doesn't last that long, and these people have no place to go. Now, it takes a little bit longer to raise the $1 million. It may be on a much lower valuation. And so again, you're forced to really decide, do I really want to do this? 18 months ago, $1 million on cap convertible. Today, $1 million at 4 pre. You feel that pain. And now the engineers you hire are like, well, I just really want to find something that I believe in, because that last shitty company that I worked in, all I have is a shitty hoverboard to show for it.
Well, 2 hoverboards.
Or 2 hoverboards.
Did you get the second one?
Yeah.
Hey everybody, let me tell you a little bit about InVision app. I use InVision app all the time with my designer, my product manager, my growth team to share mock-ups of our products. We take those mock-ups and we design them and we send them to clients, to partners, to investors. And we say, here is an InVision link. Open this on your iPhone, on your Android phone, and you can click through and see what this product that we're making is like. And when we're building websites, hey, put your comments on there. We have a partner. We have a big SmartCamp thing going on with IBM, SmartCamp 2015. we can use InVision to share that website and say, hey, is there anything you want to change? And then have a threaded discussion. You can take all those discussions off of email, all those discussions out of the chat room. Listen, email and chat rooms have their place, but not in product design. InVision is like Slack, but for product design, right? So you have Slack for a general conversation. You have Gmail for, asynchronous communication. You have InVision for product excellence. You cannot make a great product without InVision. I am dead serious about that. Every startup I invest in, I show it to them. They ask them to send me links, and boy, does it work. It supercharges everything you do. I love this product. I love this product. I love this product. Get out of email, get out of chat rooms, and do what Twitter, Airbnb, Evernote, Adobe, and many more are doing. Prototype what you're doing in InVision. It just makes designers and teams and founders so much more efficient. Go to InVisionApp.com/twist for 90 days free. That's their starter plan, free for 90 days, only at InVisionApp.com/twist, InVisionApp.com/twist. And everybody thank InVision App on Twitter. I thank them for making a great product and for supporting independent media like This Week in Startups. Let's get back to this amazing episode.
Let's talk a little bit about Zenefits. We're obviously both friends with David Sachs, but this seems to be...
They sent an email saying you're not allowed to have sex in the stairwell. What? Is that a company?
They have 60 million in revenue, it seems, 50, 60 million, so there is some amount of revenue going on there. But
that company was broken morally, and I think that's the worst kind of broken, and it will now get fixed because of David Sachs.
He can fix it.
Well, I think David Sachs has a backbone and he has a moral compass.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, look, it's hard enough to win. We do ourselves a huge disservice when we cheat. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's just like something that just really, like I want to compete really hard at everything I do. But I also believe that everybody else is going to play fairly by the rules as well, and then we'll see who wins on the field of battle, and that's cool. Because then when you fail, you can actually identify why it didn't work, get better and try it again, and the next time you're that much more likely to... But it all presupposes fairness. And I just have this real fundamental issue with this concept of cheating.
Yeah, there was some cheating.
It fucking burns me.
Yeah.
And that's not fair, because again, who gets screwed? The employees get screwed.
How do you see the difference? Because a lot of people have taken Zenefits and brought up, let's say, Theranos, and then they brought up, hey, where you worked, Facebook, a bunch of lawsuits, the fine with the FTC. What's the difference between what happened at Facebook when you were there and Zenefits today?
When we were doing things, so as an example, I got sued by 7 state attorneys general.
For?
Well, they didn't know what to sue for. They were all political opportunists trying to get elected to governor. But we created something called Beacon, which was not well understood in 2007. You act on site A, we capture your intent and actions, we use and do it on site B. So we were trying to figure things out that had not been figured out before. There was no rule that said you couldn't do any of that stuff. If there was, we would have lived by it.
Right.
And then there are now rules. And now, by the way, there's an entire industry that exists.
Retargeting.
Retargeting. On the back of all of this. So it was never about breaking the law, it was about figuring out where the boundaries were.
Right.
There's a law that says you can't lie about like pretending to be something you're not. I mean, that's what makes sure that your mechanic isn't the one that gives you a liver transplant.
In the Zenefits case.
You know, and your lawyer isn't the one that actually teaches your kids maths and sciences at school. There are laws around fraud and impersonation, but they're there for a reason. They're not there to necessarily, retard progress. They're there to make sure that people play within the boundaries of the rules so that everybody has the best shot. So anyways, I think that David is going to fix it.
Yeah.
I think Zenefits underneath its core is actually a very good company. I think it has a product that makes sense. I also think, practically speaking, that Gusto is actually a fantastic company as well, and I think the door has been opened. Because I think, again, when people go and skate the line, you open the door to folks who are willing to play by the rules and still do well. And then the N+1 customer decides that they trust the company more because of the way that they've demonstrated the way that they've approached company building.
Let's talk a little bit about Theranos. This has been a big topic of discussion the last couple of years, privately and then now publicly.
can I just say on a technical level, we've tried to build 2 businesses that try to do this, what they're trying to do. We did it with a group of Caltech PhDs. We did a group of MIT scientists. We're at it again with a group of Harvard biologists. Fail, TBD. This is really hard. The vagaries of figuring out the complexities of your physiology on a single drop of blood, I cannot overestimate the difficulty.
Right.
The technical capability and difficulty. It is exceptionally hard. I've burned tens of millions of dollars, and all I know is we still don't know the answer. So in my heart of hearts, I hope Theranos is real. But I also think that in order to do this, you have to have a traditional governance model and radical transparency, because you need to know what you don't know. And you open yourself up that way to the good people that work at your company to tell you, here's a better way of doing something. But if it's all about compartmentalizing information, it's just very difficult to build a good company because nobody knows what's really going on. I had a friend that interviewed there. We ended up hiring him to another great company. He is a star. At Google, he was a star. At Facebook, he was a star. And then he went to another extremely well-known company. I'd say it, but then you'd know who it was. Very well-known guy. And he's like, I had 3 interviews at Theranos, and they gave me an offer. He wasn't allowed to go past the front door. It's like, what? I mean, like, that's just not how it works here. You have to be extremely transparent about what you're doing to give people the ability to judge whether they're going to give you their most precious asset, which is their time and their intellectual wherewithal. And I think that's a reasonable trade-off. You as a company CEO have equity. You think it's going to be worth all the money in the world. The reality is it may not be. But there's a compact between you and then the person that takes that equity in return for their reputation, their intellect, and their time. And I think to violate that is pretty sacrosanct in my mind.
What is the end game over there? Because
I don't know. I don't know the company. I hope it's for real. It would look more real to me if you had a bunch of legitimate investors and legitimate board members who knew the science or who knew the financial structure and who had a legal obligation. Like, I have a fiduciary obligation when I invest in a company. A fiduciary to them, to ourselves, to our investors. That means something. Like, I can be sued. I can go to jail if I act in an illegal way. And so I take that seriously. But when you have a bunch of independents and you also have a bunch of people who are just technically incapable of telling you right from wrong, it's just hard. Much, much harder. You're just making it much harder on yourself. So, for all the value that board has created in the outside world, Henry Kissinger, all these people, it would have been great to have like a scientist and a couple of traditional VCs on the board. I think it would have helped a lot.
But maybe they couldn't have those people on the board because maybe there's no there. That's what the logic would take anybody. The logic is taken.
I don't know. I hope it's real because I think she represents something that's really, I think, exciting and amazing in Silicon Valley, that somebody can just appear out of nowhere and build something at that scale. So I think we should all hope that this company is a success.
Would the Wall Street Journal be digging in this deeply? What are they?
Probably not. But like I said, I think let's all hope and give her the benefit of the doubt that this thing is a real company.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Social Capital Partnership. You launched it, I believe, almost exactly 5 years ago now.
5 years ago, yeah.
5 years. What's the state of the firm? You've raised 3 funds. How much have you deployed? And how is it going?
Well, it's interesting because so we've raised 4 funds, billions under management, second fastest firm after Andreessen to get past that magical $1 billion mark. When you look at the portfolio quality, it's actually the best of every single VC in Silicon Valley. So here's what I would tell you. Forget about us pitching you about social capital. Here's what I've realized about picking a good investor. There are, I think, 4 things that matter, and you should do your own diligence because these things are critical, especially when times are tough. The first is, are they good pickers? And there is now exceptional data from places like CB Insights and Mattermark, where they will go and literally rank every single portfolio of every single venture capitalist to answer the question, is this a high growth portfolio or not? And I'll tell you why it matters. But that's number one. It matters because now success begets more success. You are then surrounded by a portfolio of other great exceptional leaders. As they learn things, they can pass them off to you. It's better to be within a group of winners. So it's better to be, the 11th guy on the Warriors than it is to be the second guy on the 76ers. Always.
Or the first guy on the 76ers.
Even that.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. What I would say on portfolio quality, actually, 7 out of 10 companies are high growth companies according to those guys. We're number one in the entire industry. And I think what that means is we're good pickers. So the diligence that we do and the thoughtfulness that we take to understand people and their businesses, sometimes it takes us a little bit longer than we would like, and maybe you would like, but I think we generally get to good answers. And even when the answer is it's not a good fit, we try to give as much feedback back to make it a fit, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing then that I think you need to look at is what is the percentage of that VC's portfolio that gets follow-on financing? And it's so crucial. So as an example, Sequoia has the single best percentage of getting A's financed to B's. The single best. Spark is second, we're third. And then everybody is a distant also ran, and we are like 2 sigma above the industry average. Why is it important? So obviously, Sequoia has a fantastic brand. When they pick you, there's a bunch of folks out there that will give you the benefit of the doubt. Hugely important when you need to raise more capital. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what about from B to C? And there, what's interesting is Greylock is the best. We're the second best, and everybody else is a distant also ran, and Sequoia is actually right below the industry average. So what does that say? What it says is, A, you have to construct and be good pickers, and then B, you have to help the portfolio companies in very specific ways so that you continue to get to that next tier of capital. It's not sufficient to just pick somebody because they can get you from the A to the B if from the B to the C you're just as fucked as everybody else. That doesn't work. And it's not sufficient to pick the wrong person in the A and then all of a sudden hope it's going to work out in the B. So it's really important that you're maximizing both those probabilities. So again, CB Insights, Mattermark, look at the data, multiply those two things together and rank them. And it's important for you because you cannot afford to be in a situation where in the absence of operational help, you could run out of oxygen accidentally. And then you want to have a situation where your venture investors have the benefit of the doubt with other investors. Because over a period of making enough good investments, they will say to you, all right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, so that I can call in the 11th hour and say, listen, I know this is on the fence for you, but put in the $5 million. I'm telling you, we can help make it work. It fucking matters, especially in times like this. And then the other two things which I think are important to me personally is number one are the people that you're working with mapping to what you are as a person. Whether it's your gender, race, ethnicity, which is more at this level, or whether it's your perspective and philosophy on how society and life should work. Because if you are going to be successful, I think it's really important that you pick people to bring along that are like you, so then that your values are then further reflected, because success begets success. And the last thing you want to do is create a successful person in someone you morally disagree with. And you do that by picking the wrong investor. So I think that's a really important one. Anyway, so like you put these all things together, I think we're doing well. It wasn't enough for us. And so we made the decision last year that we were going to migrate into not just being a venture firm, but being more of a company. And in building a company, our model looks very similar to what Berkshire has built or what Alphabet is building, which is basically, in our perspective, there is an opportunity to build a master brand in technology. Someone who has a really huge capital base, but a big vision around building things that create change in ways that we think are important. And the way that we frame our mission is, what we are trying to do more than anybody else is to basically advance humanity by solving the world's hardest problems. And so we work backwards from what are those hard problems? Energy, healthcare, education, gender equality, whatever it is. And we try to find businesses that do that. We think that'll create a lot of capital and wealth. And it's important that then we control that versus somebody else who doesn't have that moral persuasion, because otherwise bad things happen. And so we have to basically reallocate that in constructive ways. So over time, we'll look like that. We'll look like a company with a huge amount of capital that invests, that builds, that buys, private companies, public companies, minority investments, majority takeouts.
Let's talk a little bit about diversity in the industry. You came out earlier this year. There was some sort of study about diversity at VC firms, which has been, how would you describe the diversity issue in venture capital?
This is really, really important. The gap between the entrepreneurial class and the investor classes has never been further, has never been wider. When you look around this room, the entrepreneurial classes are in general younger by nature, more socially liberal, more progressive. They've grown up in an environment where they believe fundamentally in gender and racial equality, in equality of sexual orientation, all these things that are just like key moral pillars of how we've all been raised. And the investor class comes from a very different ilk. So the gap is the biggest. Why is it important? It's important because I'll use a quote to explain this. There's a very famous family in banking, the Rothschild family, and this quote, which I now use all the time, is that Nathan Rothschild, who was one of the sort of patriarchs who financed a bunch of wars and blah, 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 one of the wealthiest people in the world at the time, says something to the effect of, I care not on whose head the crown lies when the sun never sets. I care who controls the British money supply, because he who controls the British money supply controls the British Empire. I'm paraphrasing the quote, but you can find it. That is even more true today than it is then. And if you have the wrong people trapping and controlling wealth creation, productivity gains, we as a society are fucked. Period, end of story, writ large. It speaks to the emergence of Bernie Sanders, it speaks to the emergence of Donald Trump, it speaks to Occupy Wall Street, it speaks to all of these things that are these fissures of inequality. So we owe it to ourselves to close the gap. The investor class should not stay where it is, and we should not be forced to go there. They should come to us. So how do we do it? At our firm, we've just taken a very simple point of view. My philosophy is I just want to be around people that have gone through the struggles that I've gone through. I grew up, it's funny, I was a little overweight, people called me a packy. I fucking dealt with that shit for 15 years. I meet these amazing women, they talk about how they've felt, maligned as they've tried to do. I see my other partner is a Pakistani Muslim, what he's gone through, and I fucking empathize with that. And it gives me energy because I'm like, these are the people that should win. I want to win with them. They should win. You should help them win. And then other people like them will feel better about winning and that it is possible to win. And then instead, you're not going to have the Koch brothers trapping $100 billion of wealth and all. Those days have to end. So for us, it's like, so you got to take a step, right? Step one, I have to construct a firm. I am so convinced we are going to fucking crush it. We're going to destroy the established venture industry. They are so laggard and old and dead and white and male. They're fucked. And they should be listening not to what I'm saying, but to the clapping, because that's what really matters, because it's that validation that everybody else perceives it. And then in success, we are going to build an amazing organization of people that positively change the world in ways that create more equality. And we will reallocate and redistribute all of that success in dramatically fairer ways. And that is inspiring. I like that, and I want to see that. I met this amazing guy, this African-American kid yesterday, and he's fucking grinding. And I told him how it was like when I was grinding. And I said, we got to get you into a great company, because you got to put points on the board so that you can come back and work with us, so that when you're a partner at Social Capital and we put you in the field and say, go and fucking make other entrepreneurs feel amazing and help them, he can do it with credibility. And then he wins, and then every other young African-American kid that grew up in inner city Detroit is like, I can be like that guy. I see that guy. He is me. See how important that is?
For sure.
So, yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Pretty good. Pretty good. And when you released that report, back to the report was pretty abysmal. What impact did that have? And what was the point of that initial volley that, hey, we're going to like actually take a report card? Because the report card from Google, Twitter, Facebook, they all voluntarily put, hey, here's our diversity numbers, pathetic, obviously, but improving slightly. You did this for the venture industry, or you were involved in doing this for the venture industry?
We went to every single website and we said, well, he's white. There are no black people. Okay, well, hopefully that'll change. There's a couple Indian guys. They must be coding at, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it was brutal. It was pathetic. So why did we do it? We did it because we worked with the information to do it. We wanted to help them tell a story that was really important, that mattered. Again, technology is the most important leveler that we have. This industry, you, us, this place, this time, is the epicenter of all change. It is so important because if we set it right, then everybody else follows. So I did it for that reason. We also did it because for me, I want a check and balance where every day we look around the table at Social Capital, I really don't care what happens at some of these other firms. They're all, in my opinion, they're laggards. So who cares? Let's not expect them to change. But Ashley, myself, Mamoon, Ted, Bridget, we're in control of Social Capital. And so we can decide every day what we're going to do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's a pretty diverse
I want to be
group.
held accountable.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and we shouldn't even be thinking about like trying to get to like 50% men, 50% women. I actually suspect what I've realized over time, early stage investing, I think actually women are dramatically better than men.
Why?
Because men run around in the early stages with this fucking, you know, bravado dick measuring contest of like, you know, they're trying to like be like pickers, like, look at me, I picked. Here's the reality. Let's say before Social Capital got created, who are the top firms? Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, Benchmark, Accel, Greylock. Think of the last 3 great companies that got created. Google, Facebook, Uber. Evenly allocated across these firms. Is there a systematic edge, or was that just normal distribution of outcomes? Why is it that the firms that were able to do Google and or Kleiner and Sequoia who did Google whiffed on Uber, whiffed on Facebook? Or the people that passed on Google didn't get into Facebook? It's because they're evenly distributed. So whenever I hear like people are like anointing like, wow, this person must be an oracle. Oh my gosh, they must have seen the future. I think it's like roughly BS. The early stage game, in my opinion, is empathizing with the entrepreneur and understanding their character and not missing. That's it.
I agree.
Don't miss.
I agree. Don't miss is my motto.
So the don't miss part, anybody can execute. The empathizing, I think men have this like psychological ego where they can't subsume it in many cases to make those kinds of deep decisions. Like it's like where you need to like strip apart the superficial bromance and get to like the core of the personality. And so honestly, like I look at, for example, like when we started Social Capital, it was myself, Ted, Mamoon, and Bridget, my wife. And if I look back and I think, who do I rely on more than anybody else to assess the character of a person? She has been more right. Every deal that she said, you 3 fucking idiots, don't put money in this thing, she was right. 100% she was right. And when she basically would be like, you know what, this guy is special. She has been right 100%. And I look at the way that, you know, our partners make those decisions, Ashley Carroll, Ashley Mayer, Bridge, they're consistently, to me, I trust those signals now way more. Because dudes are like duding it up. They're like, fuck it, you know, and it's just like, it's sloppy. So I don't like it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
you have to also, I think, be self-actualized and self-confident enough to basically say we really need to have the people that are best at the types of decisions at the point in which we're trying to make it. You know, and like when it comes to the late stage, we have guys that are just like amazing. They can like tickle the keyboards and create these Excel models, and like the Excel model will dance and it'll, great. And there's a time and place for that, you know. So I just think like we need to find deeply sensitive people in early stage investing. And there's some men that are like that. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of women like that. So I actually like really think like that's probably where there should be a dramatically better gender balance, because it's like if a firm wants to be successful and you really internalize what decision you're trying to make, you would just get to that answer. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you want to win.
What is this 8 ball that you created? I know this was like an interesting project.
So I would encourage all of you guys, to the extent you care, go to analytics.socialcapital.com. But one of the things that we realized we needed to do is, again, how do we get 70% of our portfolio to be high growth? And how are we the single best firm in getting from A through C? It's because we actually help. It's not because, of anything else. And what we're able to do with companies is get in and use a lot of the same techniques that we refined at Facebook and we refined at Instagram, and we abstracted those into a set of open source tools now that are available to you. So when you may have heard this term, but like when you're a public company, there's something called GAAP financials, generally acceptable accounting principles. And that's how you report numbers, profit, loss, revenue, all of this stuff. So there's a set of rules that the industry uses to make sure that you can compare apples to apples across companies. So we said, well, why can't we create that exact same thing for non-financial metrics, for product health, for user engagement, for all of the things that we care about in the early stage that can really help us think through product market fit. And so we built those into tools, and we were using them so often internally to help make decisions that we thought, you know what? And it was crazy because we had this debate. Well, this is our secret sauce. We should not release it. And then I was like, actually, no, that's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is being able to look at it and then make a better decision. And so it's now available. You can use it. If you want, you can actually send us the data automatically, and we'll actually look at it with you and give you our interpretation. Over the next few months, we're going to be able to allow you to benchmark the data. So if you want to understand how your MRR growth stacks up to 60 of our best companies, you'll be able to do that. If you want to figure out whether your cohorts and users are as good as, Facebook's publicly available data, we'll be able to allow you to benchmark it to that. So it'll just be this ongoing thing. And what we're trying to do is create, for non-financial metrics, an automated system that allows you guys to just be better informed. And again, that makes the ecosystem better. It improves your odds of getting financed because now you have a better way of presenting the information, be more sophisticated about what you're building. And then maybe at the edges, you decide that it makes a lot of sense to work with us because we know that stuff too. And if that happens, so be it.
Great. Let's do the lightning round. Apple versus FBI.
I think it's a ruse, and I'm on the side of the FBI.
Self-driving cars.
Sorry, can I just explain?
Yeah.
Apple already has the ability to fucking root your phone. If any of you ever wake up and it says, oh, Apple just dropped a binary onto your phone so that you can update it, and that's how you upgrade your operating system, I just want you guys to know that that is the exact same as them dropping a binary onto your phone, grabbing all your photos and sending them to some server in Russia. It's technically the same thing. So I think we just need to have like a little dusting of technical education. I think it's a wonderful propaganda thing. It's great for us all to be martyrs. But they are already doing it. It just so happens that it's for OS upgrades. And I'm sure some technical person could validate that, but I think that's what's happening. So I'm kind of just like, I don't know, what are we debating here? There is a legal request. You give the data, you move on. I mean, I don't...
Okay, self-driving cars, when will the majority of miles in a major city in the United States be driven autonomously level 4?
I think by 2020, there will be large blocks of cities that are level 4 autonomous vehicle only. That's my prediction, 2020.
Only.
Only.
Okay, so I could take the over.
So think about this, Jason. The major vagary of LiDAR and all these self-learning systems is this presumption that there's all of these random events. Well, if you basically, create a distribution where there's no random events, then all of a sudden, you get to 99.9% viability dramatically faster. So no bicycles, no pedestrians, just autonomous cars, and especially if they're electric, it's still all fine and good. And so what cities can do is just cordon off areas and say, in this 10 square mile block radius, we'll allow only autonomous cars. And you dramatically simplify the problem, and then they can go to Tesla, buy a fleet, deploy the fleet. If you're a taxpayer of Palo Alto, you'll have an app, you'll provision the car, and downtown Palo Alto will be completely traffic-free.
Virtual reality.
I think it's a huge red herring. It is like, if anybody's old enough, it's like in the 90s when us nerds were like, ooh, did you upgrade from your EGA to your VGA monitor? And then, they're like, oh, did you get that graphics card so you can go to the SVGA? It's a display layer. It's a highly fragmented display layer because it's not systematized. And so you're going to have this balkanized content library problem where there'll be 8 apps for Oculus and 9 apps for Magic Leap and 14 apps for the Chinese version. And
Uber.
Huh?
Uber.
So I tweeted out the time to build a $300 billion company. It took Berkshire Hathaway 49 years. It took Apple 35, Microsoft 25, Google 15, Facebook 12. I think if any company is going to break that, it's either Slack or Uber. I think specifically in Uber's case, it's probably more likely that it gets there first. I also think, though, that the half-life in getting to 300 billion is also equal to the half-life to destroy 300 billion. So Berkshire Hathaway, it took 50 years. It'll take 50 years for them to go away. Facebook, it took 12 years to get 300 billion of value, is now in that amount of time or less, it can lose it. So Uber's problem in getting there in 8 or 10 years is just that in 8 or 10 years, we can go to full level 4 autonomy in 80 to 90% of city-states run by the cities themselves. And I think that's their biggest risk.
Y Combinator. Y Combinator.
Y Combinator is necessary but not sufficient. And I think it's an important part of the ecosystem. I think what it's going to struggle with is whether it is for outsiders or whether it's for inside credentials. So some people I've seen the Wall Street Journal characterize it as like the new Silicon Valley MBA. And I don't think that that's what Y Combinator's culture is like internally, but they should make sure that they prevent that. Because I think like Y Combinator worked the best in terms of at least value when they were appealing to all the outsiders. And I think what they don't want is a bunch of kids who otherwise would have gone to McKinsey and Goldman Sachs now thinking that the next step in finishing school is YC. Instead, they want the Drew Houstons and the Brian Chesky's, who want to basically like disrupt stuff. So it's a real challenge in scale.
How many have you invested in Y Combinator companies?
Y Combinator, frankly, we've done very few to none. Again,
none.
Look, we're very good pickers, and we have a way of looking at businesses, and so it's not that we would, but we just haven't found the one that's really floated our boat yet.
Okay, let's hear it for Chamath Palihapitiya. Well done. Crushed it, man.
Thank you, brother.
Crushed it.